A routine reboot, then nothing. The site is down, and when you open the console, you are not at a normal login. You are dropped into something called emergency mode, a bare root prompt with a message that the system failed to mount a file system. So what happened? Think of Linux booting like a pilot running a pre-flight checklist. Before the plane leaves the gate, every item has to check out. Linux has a checklist too, for the disks it must mount, and it lives in a file called fstab. If one item on that list fails, the captain refuses to take off. That is emergency mode. The plane is parked at the gate, and it just handed you the manual. Let's read it and fix the checklist. Quick gut check. Your server boots straight into emergency mode. What is the very first thing you do? One of these is the calm, senior move, and the rest are panic. Lock in your answer, and we will prove it in the terminal. Emergency mode almost always means one thing. Something on the mount checklist failed. The full boot log is journoctal-xb, but let's go straight to the suspect, the mount unit for /data. And there it is in plain English. Dependency failed for /data. Systemd tried to mount that file system during boot, could not, and rather than limp along half-broken, it stopped and called you. So the checklist has a bad line. Now we find which one. Here is the safe way to reproduce exactly what boot tried without rebooting. Mount -a means mount everything on the checklist. Watch, it chokes on one line. Mount /data special device /dev/sdb1 does not exist. That is the whole problem in one sentence. The checklist tells Linux to mount a disk called sdb1, and that disk is simply not here. Maybe it was removed, maybe it was a typo. Either way, the device is gone. Let's read the checklist itself. This is fstab, the file system table. Each line is one file system to mount at boot. The top line is normal, the root file system the machine runs on. But look at the last line. /dev/sdb1, mount it at /data. That is our phantom. A disk that no longer exists, still sitting on the boot checklist. Let's decode a line because interviewers love this. The first three fields are simple. What to mount, where to mount it, and the file system type. Device, mount point type. Then the mount options. Defaults is the normal set. You will also see read-only or no-auto, which means do not mount this one automatically at boot. The last two numbers trip everyone up. The first is for an old backup tool, almost always 0. The second is the fsck pass, the disk check order. 0 means skip, 1 is the root disk, 2 is everything else. And here is the senior word that prevents this entire outage. Nofail. Add it to a non-critical mount, and Linux boots normally even if that disk is missing. It turns a hard stop into a shrug. In an interview, if they ask why a server boots to emergency mode, this is the whole answer. A required mount in fstab failed, and nofail is how you stop it from grounding the plane. The disk is genuinely gone, so the fix is to take it off the checklist. This one line deletes the bad fstab entry. In real life, you would open the file in an editor, but this does the same thing, and it tells us when it is done. Now the single most important habit in this whole video. Never reboot to test an fstab change. Run mount -a first. It does exactly what boot does. If it comes back clean like this, all file systems mounted, you know the next reboot is safe. We just tested the takeoff while still on the ground. Last, we tell systemd the checklist changed and clear the old failure it was holding onto. Now the system is clean. On a real box, you would simply type exit or reboot and it comes straight up. Playbook screenshot this. 1. Do not panic and do not reinstall. Read the boot log, journoctal-xb, and find what failed. 2. 9 times out of 10 in emergency mode, it is a file system that would not mount. The log names it for you. 3. Fix the bad line in fstab, then test with mount -a before you ever reboot. Prove it works on the ground first. 4. Add nofail to any mount the server can live without. A missing data disk should never stop the whole machine from booting. The write-up, back to our grounded plane. The pre-flight checklist, fstab, had one item for a disk that was no longer on board. With no nofail to mark it optional, the captain, systemd, refused to take off and parked at the gate. That is emergency mode, the senior lesson that lands in interviews. If a box won't boot, read the log first, fix the failed mount in fstab, and always test with mount - before rebooting. And going forward, put nofail on every disk the server can run without. That one word turns a midnight outage into a non-event. Case 5 closed. A dead disk on the boot list, found and fixed the calm way. If this made emergency mode a lot less scary, subscribe, because the next case is a database that flat out refuses to start, and the answer is hiding in a single log line that almost everyone scrolls right past. See you there.